Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back for the 195th Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. We are approaching the November 5th election. We have a full boat as always. We are going to start with the great Mimi Gurman, who's going to read us a poem and as only she can do. And then we're going to go to Andrea Miller, who's going to give us an update on all the phone banking that's going around. We will also be joined at some point by Ray McClendon, who's going to talk about the door-to-door canvassing, that get out the vote canvassing that his group is doing. We've got Jim Nathan from the Great Dictatorship of Florida, who's going to give us an update on what's happening down there. And we'll be joined by Roger Rappaport from Michigan, who's going to give us an update on what's going on in that state. In the second hour, we're going to dive deep into nuclear issues, energy issues, and so on. Along the way, though, we're going to get a word from Tatanka Bricca about an upcoming event on the major changes going on in ufology and the increasing evidence and confirmation that we are not alone. And, I don't know how the phone banking is going with extraterrestrial aliens. I hope they show up to vote. And I do want to encourage Donald Trump to keep campaigning at the grassroots. His performance in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, was truly memorable and historic. I will tell you, I want to take a quick poll of hands. I did see with Mila Reeson the movie The Apprentice over the weekend. Who else on this call has seen The Apprentice? I know you in Radioland can't raise your hand. I guess not many. I think Mila and I can testify. It wasn't, Dr. Nancy. Well, Nancy, you were with us too. That's cheating, Nancy Naparco. We all went to see it in Santa Monica. It is probably as depressing 2.5 hours as you can ever spend in a movie theater, but it is highly instructive, and I do encourage everyone to see it and to pay for it, because the people who made it were really put through the ringer as to getting it into circulation. Mimi Gurman, can you start? And then maybe we'll go to Andrea Miller, and at some point, Tatanka, you can come in and announce the upcoming event on UFOs. Mimi, do you want to read us your poem to start?
You bet. This is war poem number 14 from my book, War Poems, Israel Gaza, the first 100 days of carnage. War poem number 14. I've sat among Arab villagers along the sea, drinking tea, eating dried fruits, praying with story and laughter for each other's survival.
Wow. Well, we pray with stories and laughter for our own survival as well. Mimi, thank you so much. I know your friend Jenna will join us in the future. I don't know if Dennis Bernstein is on with us yet. Dennis, will be having you. Andrea, do you mind if Tatanka Bricca jumps in real quick and makes an announcement?
Not a problem.
Tatanka, if you want to make your announcement about your upcoming meeting, then we'll go to Andrea and dig deep into the election. But I want to make sure you got the notice out there. And Mimi, if you'll put in the chat how people can get your book of poems, that would be really great.
I'll do that. Thanks, Harvey. And sorry, everybody, for not being here last week.
Well, we missed you. And we're glad to have you this week. We appreciate it. Tatanka, do you want to tell us real quick about what's upcoming here in the ufology world? And we've also been joined by the great EGBERTO WILLIES, who has a fabulous show out of Texas. And I've been with him a few times, and he's really great. Go ahead, please.
Well, I want to let everybody on GREEP know that yesterday there was the first Global Disclosure Day, which is actually in by law on the Chuck Schumer bill last year. There is a new global disclosure movement concerning UFOs and ETs to be celebrated every year on October 20th. This is the day that the 64-page bill that was Chuck Schumer headed up, and it was passed by everyone in the Senate Intelligence Committee, went through the process last fall. It was gutted by a couple MAGA Republicans protecting interests at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base up in Ohio, and then Lockheed down in southern Alabama, to gut out the subpoena powers and the Civilian Review Board, which would to vet things and get them over to the Library of Congress. But it is law that every arm of the U.S. military, plus the Pentagon, the entire intelligence establishment, and all military contractors by law are supposed to turn over everything they know about ETs and UFOs since January of 1945. That day was yesterday. It was clear, because the bill was gutted, that they weren't going to have the power to force them to get it out. And why they have to force it is another whole issue I won't talk about today. But that's the basis of a global disclosure movement. There are in 53 states now, in 43 states, 43 states, there are citizens disclosure committees that have been set up, and the goal is to have one in all 435 congressional districts in the United States. Reverse engineering of ET technology is aimed to create a delivery system that can strike deep into Russia, China, and North Korea within 90 to 120 seconds with thermonuclear warheads. It turns out that the reverse engineering of the ET technology has been available since the Eisenhower years, a form of free energy. We may not have even needed the oil wars. Imagine that. So I just want to very quickly stress 4 facts. UFOs, now called UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, and ETs are real. These craft and these beings are distinctly non-human, highly technological, and not from this planet. How do we know this? We know this from aerospace. We know this from military people. We know this from a whole bunch of things I can't get into. 2, the U.S. government has illegally covered this up secret for at least 80 years. They've been coming and going from planet Earth for a long time. 3, the U.S. Pentagon and private aerospace military contractors have reverse engineered and weaponized this technology, which they see trillions of dollars of patents coming out of this. The position of the global disclosure movement is it's been paid for by the U.S. taxpayer all this time. It belongs to the people of this world. And 4, the 2 existing existential crises we face, that of imminent threat of global thermonuclear war. Bulletin of Atomic Sciences has now moved the clock, as you all know, to 90 seconds. And that of climate change can be effectively addressed by liberating this information from a secret illegal cabal within our national security state. So you can go to newparadigminstitute.com, which is a part of the Romero Institute, formerly Christic Institute, Danny Sheehan and Sarah Nelson. They have a full-time office in Washington, D.C., headed up by Jim Garrison, one of Danny's old friends, not the Kennedy Jim Garrison. And I highly encourage you to go to newparadigminstitute.org, and Paradigm is Paradigm, newparadigminstitute.org. You can sign up, you can learn everything that I'm talking about and more.
Fantastic. So we want to come back to this later in the show, probably in the second hour, to talk, if you'll stick with us.
I will. I just want to say there was a 3-hour, and you can get the tape, it's on YouTube now, but a 3-hour meeting, Zoom meeting yesterday, which was from folks in Europe, folks in Asia, folks in South America, folks in the United States, and just fantastically informational and fantastically inspirational.
Well, if you'll put all the information in the chat, Tatanka, and then stick with us in the second hour, we'll get back to this because we do want to have a longer conversation about it. And that's one of the
Thank
reasons
you.
I let you lead off. We're joined by the great EGBERTO WILLIES, who, as I say, broadcasts out of Houston. Andrea Miller is rightfully applauding. We want to start with Andrea, then EGBERTO and Ray McClendon. You'll fill us in on the various latest election stuff. But, everybody's asking, what can I do? What can I do about this election? And Andrea Miller has answers from the Center for Common Ground in Virginia. Andrea, please go ahead.
Hi there. I brought a little presentation. I will drop the link in the chat. I'm only going to share a very small part. I'm going to update people on what's going on with early voting. As hopefully everybody knows, Georgia started early voting on Tuesday. And for those who may not understand why there is so much voter suppression in Georgia, look at the number on the bottom of your screen. 2,515,034 registered Black voters in the great state of Georgia. In other words, 34% of the registered voters in Georgia are Black. And then if you take another 6% that are Hispanic, 34 and 6, now you are looking at 40%, 43%, and I'm going to grab this 2% that's other, they're not white. We're looking at roughly 47% of the registered voters in the great state of Georgia are people of color, and the powers that be are scared to death. Now, one of the things that I'm going to skip this slide, I'll come back to it, that the Secretary of State has done is he has created an early voting dashboard. Now, remember, Florida started voting on Tuesday. As of 2 hours ago, this number may have been updated. 1.5 million people in Georgia have already early voted. Now, the 4 leading counties are counties right around Atlanta, or they are the counties that form Atlanta: Fulton, Cobb, Gwinnett, and DeKalb. And you can see that in DeKalb County, more than 500,000 people have already early voted. Now, the information I showed you was directly from the Secretary of State's data hub. The information that we are looking at now is from Target Early. Target Early is running a full 24 to 48 hours behind the Secretary of State. Remember, they get the information first, and then vendors like Target Smart and Catalyst, they go and collect the information. Now, I want you to take a look at these numbers. These are the early vote broken out by gender. 55% of the early voters have been women. 45% have been men. That is a 10% spread in turnout between women and men. If we look at 2020, we can expect that 55 to remain strong, and it might even go up a little. Historically, the men's performance has gone down with the passage of time. So I always find
That's
things
true
like
in many
that.
ways.
I always find things like that fascinating. Now, A judge has ruled twice in Georgia, and I think if they ask him a third time, he's going to really get mad, that Georgia will be certifying the election results by 5 p.m. on November 12th. He basically said, count them with your hands, count them with your feet. I don't care what you do, but you will be done by 5 p.m. on November 12th, and Georgia will certify on time. So that's going to be interesting to see what they try to do with that. All right, now in the great state of North Carolina. North Carolina has 1.5 million Black voters, or 21% of their voters are African American. What is really fascinating about North Carolina is look at all the political parties that people can register as a part of in North Carolina. Now, I want you to look at the number of Democrats, I want you to look at the number of Republicans, and I want you to look at the number of nonpartisans.
Wow.
North Carolina is a fascinating state. They started early voting on Thursday. Now, so far, actually more than 1 million people have early voted in North Carolina. Target Early only had the information as of technically middle of the day on Friday. So there were more votes. So the data that I have shows 926,000 people have already early voted. Now, let's look at population-wise in North Carolina. North Carolina is 21% African American. So in 2020, when 21% of the early voters were African American, we would say they voted their power. So far in 2024, we are at 19.4, and that number is probably only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. We want to eclipse 2022, and we really want to put 3 percentage points or more on 2020, meaning the people who show up to be counted. We want that number to be really, really big. I'm going to share this with you, so don't worry about it. She's going too fast. Here's the other thing that is looking very interesting in North Carolina, the breakout of who is early voting by age. So right now, 77,000 18 to 29-year-olds, the hardest age to turn out, have already voted. Now, in 2020, it was 13.6%. If this holds and this number goes up, we will definitely beat 2022. Our big number of voters 50 and over, 29, 25, and 19%. So most of the people who have showed up to early vote in North Carolina are older. And North Carolina does register by party, and those numbers are always interesting. I was trying to move this thing so I could see it. Oh, this is by race. We did that. I went back to R. Here we are. All right. And if you take a look, Democrat, Republican, unaffiliated, normally you would expect unaffiliated to split. The question is, when it splits, is it 50-50, 60-40, 70-30? That is going to be fascinating. The other thing that's fascinating is, remember, there is a 10% spread between women voting and men voting. There is a very strong possibility that women voting in this election, even though they would normally vote for the other party, may come over because of the abortion issue. So anyway, we are running phone banks. Our phone banks, our training video, and our Zoom trainings are all on the website, centerforcommonground.org/phone banks. And we do training Monday, Tuesday, actually Wednesday and Thursday, our partners are doing training, and 2 times Saturday. So if you want to go to a Zoom group phone bank, we've got a bunch of them, and you can sign up on our website. Now, everybody and their brother are working in Mecklenberg County, and a lot of people are working in Raleigh. So we are suggesting, if you're going to make calls, call anywhere that is not Mecklenburg and not Raleigh. And now notice how some of your counties have SV behind their name. Counties with SV designation are single voter households only. In other words, they are designed for new phone bank users. Those are the easy peasy ones. There's only one voter. EGBERTO, oh, much love. Yay.
Thank you. Thank
Yes,
you,
and
beautiful.
we're-
How are you
I'm gonna
doing?
go fangirl on you.
We're also joined by Jennifer Roberts, the former 2-term mayor of Charlotte.
Jennifer,
and,
great to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see
Yeah.
you. I was able to join. I'm glad that Andrea had all those wonderful slides because
Andrea made me happy. I tell you, just listening, because she had the numbers in detail. All we have is a whole lot of empirical stuff being on the radio as you know, that's all we have right now. But that is great. I love those numbers.
Well, Egbert, I'm going to put the link to the presentation in the chat, and in the presentation are the sources of where I get my data. Now, L2 is a subscription, so if you ever want any L2 data, just reach out to me and then I can get it for you.
Excellent. I appreciate that. That is
well,
great.
I have a question. If you call into Georgia or North Carolina and you have a Yankee or Northern or a Red Sox accent, is that going to hurt or help?
And I will give the story that I told in 2017 when people asked the same thing about Alabama. I want you to think of it this way. Imagine there's a country dance. Everybody knows where the dance is. Everybody knows when the dance is. There are some people who feel that they are not invited. When you make your call without your Southern accent, you are inviting people to the dance, and the dance just happens to be democracy. So call away.
Yeah,
I don't want people to think that we're reenacting the war of northern aggression here. So, Jennifer Roberts, it's really great to have you with us.
Yeah.
Then I wanted to ask Alberto, we have more than 50 people on the call, and they're all great people, as you know. Jennifer, what's the latest in your neck of the woods?
So I am in the middle of Mecklenberg County that you all were just talking about. And absolutely, if you have a different accent, we're the party that includes and accepts people who are different. So we don't mind if you talk Northern. But Mecklenburg is certainly benefiting from a lot of attention, a lot of money. We have, I think, what's interesting is that the Democratic Party here did not have a full-time staff since 2014. They have like 65 people in the office now. They have 4 different offices in Mecklenberg County. We're getting people from all over donating and doing phone banking. And it's not just the Democratic Party. There are a bunch of collaborative organizations like Red, Wine, and Blue. Andrea talked about women. Red, Wine, and Blue is focusing on suburban women. We have a really hot contested legislative race in suburbia of Charlotte, and that is against Trisha Cotham, who was the woman who changed her party affiliation after being elected as a Democrat through the legislative majority to the Republicans. And she's got a great opponent. That's a very contested race in southern Mecklenburg, so that's going to bring out people. We also have the nation's worst gubernatorial candidate.
Did you invent him? I mean, is this a real character?
Well,
Robinson.
Robinson, yeah,
Mark Robinson.
People couldn't figure out how he got elected in the first place because he has I think it's just because he has a normal sounding name. And so people didn't look in, Lieutenant Governor does not get that much attraction. But anyway, he is the worst candidate, and Josh Stein is polling like 15 points ahead. So that's going to help with up and down the ballot. We also have a constitutional amendment on the ballot, which is discriminatory against immigrants. And that is going to that's already gotten the Democrat Party very upset because it leaves out the word naturalized citizens. It's one of these things that wants to say again what's already the law, that non-citizens can't vote in federal elections, but they left out the word naturalized. So now they're trying to intimidate against people who are naturalized citizens. It's crazy. So there are a lot of things, bottom line, there are a lot of things that are going to draw people to vote progressive. There's a whole Republicans for Harris group in North Carolina that has a lot of respected business people on it. And they are, getting the business folks to say Trump's going to be horrible for the economy. And, North Carolina is all about business. So we have a lot of good reasons to have high turnout. I know that if we have over 1 million voters, that's like we have 7 million registered, and we are looking like 2008. In fact, I was at the polls the first day of early voting. I met several people who came up sheepishly and said, I haven't voted since 2008, Barack Obama. Am I still registered? And yes, they are still registered. They're just inactive. So all they have to do, they're still on the roll. They just have to go in and vote. They become active. They can even update their address during early voting. So I just think it's going to be fabulous, but we have to keep working through the election. We have to watch out for shenanigans after November the 5th, because there are already a couple of Republican lawsuits trying to take people off the voter rolls. One was turned down by a judge. They do this all within 90 days of voting, which is illegal to change things anyway. But we saw that the Supreme Court let them take RFK off the ballot, even though it was past the date that the state law enacted by the Republican legislature said they had to mail out absentee ballots. But the Republican-dominated Supreme Court changed that and said, oh no, you got to take RFK off the ballot because it'll be confusing. Anyway, so we got all kinds of things going on, but I'm feeling pretty positive.
Well, I want to point out, I know Bobby Kennedy, and I want to point out that he sued in North Carolina. He sued in North Carolina to get himself off the ballot, and he sued in New York to keep himself on the ballot.
On the ballot, yeah.
I mean, after all, have you no shame? I mean, really, it's outrageous. EGBERTO, and by the way, I want to point out, Ray McClendon has joined us, and we have Jim Nathan from Floridians. We have turned into a Confederate operation here. We have represented Virginia, North Carolina, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. So, Texas, do you want to speak next? And then
Harvey,
Atlanta and Florida.
Harvey, behave yourself now. We are no Confederate anymore, man.
Okay, thank God, thank God.
Anyway, let me just say, first of all, Jennifer, I love Anderson Clayton. I interviewed her. She is just a fireball that I think is going to help turn around North Carolina, because she's not only looking at the burbs, she's going everywhere. She's bringing votes out from everywhere. So I think, and that's what I'm seeing, not just in North Carolina, but even here. One of the things that I get empirically on the news, other than Democrats being scared as usual about what's coming, I don't think, and again, I could be wrong here, but I just can't see that first of all, that these polls are as close as they are. I started to watch how the polling methodologies are, and I think our big surprise is gonna be women. Okay, and empirically speaking, here in Texas, my daughter just called me from voting and telling me how the lines were out. You know, we never see it this long in this part of Texas, this early, and it was full of women. A niece called and said the same thing. So, what I hear with the people that are calling into the radio, everybody's doing the right thing right now, which I think it's what we all have to strive for. And like I said, I am not looking at the polls, not because I don't believe polls. I do believe in the scientific measurement of people. But after seeing what's going on with how polling is done today and who's actually answering polls, I think we have to be skeptical about it and not let it be. You know, people can influence polls and polls can influence people. We have to make sure that polls don't influence people, because what happens is we get these close polls and people start to get scared and they start to clam up and not do what they have to do. And right now I'm being a cheerleader for our progressives to make sure and go out there and do the job that needs to get done. And I think if that happens, I don't think in 1980, again, it's not baked or cooked or anything like that, really, the way things are. I don't know if you guys remember how you went to bed on 1980 and how you woke up 1980. Poor Carter, but you know.
Yeah. Well, we are a nonpartisan call, so I do want to support the idea of Donald Trump going into these states and campaigning and discussing the private parts of various celebrities, especially in sports. I think it's a very effective campaign tactic. And again, we want to emphasize that, Andrea Miller, your effort is nonpartisan. You're get out the vote. People want to get out the vote, call in, and don't worry about your northern accents, and go to Common Ground, Center for Common Ground. And we have Ray McClendon now with us. That was just, by the way, the great EGBERTO WILLIES has a fabulous radio show and is out of Texas and is a co-member of the Pacifica National Board. Great to have you with us. Ray McClendon in Atlanta. You want to talk about your work with Communities United? You guys are knocking on doors. Is that right? Uh-oh, you're muted. Hold on. Sorry about that. There you go.
We had a great campaign that started out on this past Saturday. We had two things going on. We had a statewide Black Men Vote campaign turning out Black men across the state in several of the areas where we know there are a lot of low propensity Black male voters. We also had several rallies on Saturday across the state, starting our parties to the polls and strolls to the polls activities. Here in Atlanta, we had over 100 volunteers out with Mayor Andre Dickens and several council members getting out in some of those low propensity neighborhoods in the metro Atlanta area. So things are cranking up. So far we've had through today, as of about an hour ago, we've had over 1.5, almost 1.6 million voters to vote early, which is great. So that's the good news. The bad news is that compared to 2020, the number of Black voters is down 19% compared to only approximately a little over 3% down for white voters. So as you know, that is not the way we want to see those numbers running. We want to see the numbers running at least the same. We're running about 29% of Black voters to the total vote, and the voting aggregate for registered voters, Black voters out of the total is about 33.5%, 34%. So we've got work to do. And so we're going to be surging activity and resources into those targeted communities that we already have identified that we've been working on from the beginning of this voting season. And we'll be doing even more of that depending on how much in resources we do have available. So things there, the energy is there. Certainly the rallies that are being held are large, but we've got to translate that into getting people out to the polls. We want to, our strategy always is to have a plan to vote, and that plan to vote should include early voting where absolutely possible, because we don't trust mail-in ballots, and certainly we don't want to get into the potential for long lines on the last day of the election, which of course is election day. So again, we're surging resources across the state in those areas where we know we got a high concentration of low propensity Black voters.
Well, we did have a conversation a few weeks back with you. People were talking about, flying into Georgia to go door to door, and we made it clear that the best thing to do is to send you the money to pay canvassers who are in their neighborhoods, and
Yes.
And that's what we're going to support. So Center for Common Ground and Communities United for Justice, those are the two that we are nonpartisan, get out the vote organizations that we are supporting wholeheartedly.
And just to show you how that works and how we work together with Center for Common Ground, I just had a training today with Andrea's folks who will run the mobile app. We have a mobile app now today, but we come from the old school when you used to get, pieces of paper with the addresses and names on them, but now it's all on a mobile app. Her folks train the folks that'll be going out later this week on the mobile app that automatically gives them the houses and the names with a script, and gives us real-time information on who we've contacted, whether or not they intend to vote, et cetera. So we're getting real-time information based upon the technology that we're using that was provided to us by Center for Common Ground. So
Right.
we've got that's a great program, great platform, and it's been working very well for us so far.
Well, I want to encourage everybody. These are the two organizations that we're supporting, along with our website, usgrassroots.org, which Andrea Miller helped get going here with, which has basically a directory of more than 50 organizations working, nonpartisan, working around the country on election protection.
And I want to say something briefly about what EGBERTO was just saying about polling. We know that we've seen that over the last 3 or 4 weeks, that the MAGA Republicans have started using the Bannon strategy that he's using overall by flooding the zone with skewed polls. And a lot of these folks use the averages of all polls. So you can guess what happens when you have polls that are skewed. It's going to weight down and skew, therefore, the overall averages toward Republicans. So I agree with him that we're cautiously optimistic that things are trending in our direction, that the enthusiasm is there. It's not being picked up by the polls. It might appear that she's stalled out in some of these polls, but it's because of the weighting that's going on with the way they're being flooded with these polls that are not peer-reviewed, statistically accurate polls.
Okay, very interesting. Mike Hersh has a hand. I want to point out we're joined by the great Dennis Bernstein. He's the host of the Flashpoints radio show, nationally syndicated. It's out of KPFA in Berkeley. And Dennis, if you're interested in having Ray or Andrea along with Jennifer and EGBERTO on, it would be something that might be of interest to you. It's up to you guys. We want to go to Mike Hersh. Mike, you've got a hand.
Yeah, thanks, Sluggo. Just about this time of year back in 2008 is when I first met Andrea Miller, and Andrea was running for Congress at that point. And we drove down from Maryland to help door knock to help elect Andrea to Congress. We did not quite make it, but we did much better than anyone would have expected from what Andrea said was a Yankee from Chicago and that southern
I think
Virginia.
that's a Cub. But anyway, go ahead.
Could be a White Sox, but anyway, yeah. So we door knocked, and that was the first year that Barack Obama was running for president, and it was a predominantly upscale African American walk list that at least I was door knocking, and there were people who were so excited to vote for Obama, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, when's the election, in a month?" And I was like, "No, it's in about 9 days." And they were like, "Oh my gosh, well, I better make plans to vote." It's so important to do outreach like Ray and Andrea are doing, because without that outreach, not everybody's a political animal like those of us on this Zoom. Not every one of us is locked in on that election calendar. But if you remind them in a timely way, they will hopefully turn out and vote. Because like we were saying before the Zoom, polls don't vote, polls don't win elections, voters do.
Well, in Poland they do, but here
but yes, exactly, Sluggo. But the key thing is they're not voters unless they turn out.
Right.
And that's why we need to turn them out. And I'm really curious about the landscape in the fascist state of Florida under Il Duce. I was going to say another term, Ron DeSantis down there, who's just a fez and a 3-hour speech away from being Florida's very own Mussolini. And I'm hoping that Jim Nathan can weigh in and we can bring Florida into this discussion, because
go ahead.
I remember Hillary Clinton only barely lost Florida back in 2016, and the tides there are changing.
You're absolutely right, and we have to remember that Florida actually is the site of the only time we had a violent coup d'etat that put a president, well, except for 1876, but in 2000, a violent mob stopped the vote count in Florida and changed the presidency with the help of the Supreme Court, one justice of which is still there, and 3 of the legal aides to the Brooks Brothers mob that created a violent coup are on the Supreme Court now. So 4 of the justices on the U.S. Supreme Court are veterans of the violent coup that occurred in the United States in Florida in 2000. Never forget that. And that's something we have to do.
And I'm thinking about all the Haitian Americans who are eligible to vote in Florida and Little Haiti, who might have been offended by a few things that the Republican presidential and vice presidential nominee have been saying about them. So, Jim, if you could weigh in, we'd love to hear about
Jim
that.
from Floridians for Democracy. Do you want to give us a report, and then we'll go to Melissa? And do you want to, Dennis, if you want to be recognized, we'll allow you to reintroduce yourself to Ray and Andrea. Go ahead, from Florida, please.
Great, thank you very much. I feel like I'm at Old Home Week with all these people on here, and I'm not. I'm a guest in your house.
Well, you are, and there are 60 people on the call right now, so we're going to go ahead.
And I'm not going to try to compete with Andrea with all of her statistics, but I have a couple of statistics to share with you. First of all, Florida is very proud of itself to race to the bottom. We are number 1, and when we see Texas or some other state that gets ahead of us, we work really hard to see if we can pass them up. So we had the largest turnout for January 6th of any of the insurrectionists, and darn well proud of that. Number 1 in book bans. We were behind Texas for a little while, but we worked really hard to get over that. We've been working hard at our public school takeover for quite a few years, and got to the voucher system to support the private schools, and all the data shows that we're funding for people that were already paying for their kids to go to private schools, and reducing the funding for those schools. Now we have an amendment that was put up by the state legislature. I call them the lemming-like legislators that follow what DeSantis wants, that would have all of our school board elections become partisan. And so no independents, which is a large percentage of Florida, we call them no party affiliates, would not even be able to vote. And they figure that's another way to gerrymander to the takeover of the public schools. And they're doing a lot to try to advertise and market the support for this Amendment 1. Placing massive teaching restrictions, telling teachers that they are required to teach about the Civil War, but they are not allowed to use the word slavery. We've had the.
Are they allowed to say who won?
I don't know. I haven't read all the rules. I have to admit
Okay.
that. I just stopped at that one. I thought, I can't. How would you be a social studies teacher? How would you be a history teacher? Public university takeovers. New college is going to be the new Hillsdale from the north, and then restricting what public university and professors can say. Elimination of DEI programs through all the public school system and many businesses now. We've learned, even with these hurricanes, that this is just a part of normal summer. Things happen in the summer with the warm temperatures in the water. There is no environmental challenge or issue whatsoever. We've become really good at marginalized populations. We had an impressive trans speaker that was to come to Florida a few months ago, and she was willing to speak, but only if she could do it by Zoom, because Florida was the first state on the do not travel trans map. We have been successful at getting a couple of publicly elected attorneys general or state attorneys in a couple of locations in Florida fired by DeSantis. So firing elected officials, threatening businesses. Disney's gotten the most publicity, but more businesses. And now we have a new threat going on because there's been some ads presented for Amendment 4, which is to restore women's rights in Florida. And DeSantis is being sued for spending money, state money, to advertise and to fight it and to try to stop getting to the media stations and telling them they can't broadcast ads that are paid for and supportive of Amendment 4. The one positive out of this is that the attorney for DeSantis that represents healthcare just resigned because he was forced to send a letter under his name as to why these media stations needed to stop this ad. And he resigned, and he said it was a matter of his conscience that he couldn't continue. So maybe a tiny little thread there, but just specific to voters' rights, and then I'll let you all.
Well, specific to voters' rights, yeah. I want to ask you, why is it still illegal in Florida for convicted felons to vote, but the presidential candidate can be a convicted felon?
Because he's not in jail.
Okay.
That's the rationale behind it, that he's still on appeal. But I guess if you weren't the former president and you were still on appeal, you probably still wouldn't be allowed to vote. But there's probably a special DeSantis rule that permits that.
Okay. So where do we stand now on election protection?
So election issues. So I think we're seeing again the race to the bottom in Florida is like the poll taxes from the civil rights from the Jim Crow era. We now have found other creative ways to turn off the voters, and we're seeing this in the last couple of years. There's been a lot of new actions taken. DeSantis set up a police force to go after individuals that he determined were doing something illegal. None of those people have ever been proven of having done anything, but they were publicly arrested and embarrassed in front of individuals where there had been mistakes, not by them, but by the elections offices to permit them to vote. That was in the 22 election. And but more recently, a almost 100-page law was passed with new unprecedented civil and criminal penalties on voter registration organizations like the League of Women Voters and other organizations that go out and help people to get registered. And so all kinds of penalties with that. And so those penalties are primarily focused on, again, the marginalized and disenfranchised individuals in the state. The changes included toughening up requirements for maintaining lists of voters kept by county supervisors of elections, making it easier to declare registered voters inactive or ineligible. By the end of 2023, more than 1.25 million registered voters were dropped from Florida's active voter rolls. But check this out. 170,000 of them were Republicans, but 504,000 were NPAs, or independents, and 566,000 were Democrats. And then DeSantis' lemming-like legislators asserted that the law was needed to combat issues with no definition of what the issues were that they were combating. They didn't offer any evidence, but they knew that they were essential. The new law obviously hampers civic groups to register and mobilize voters. And even the fear of what might happen creates problems. And that's what we saw back in the fascist regime, was sometimes it was just the fear of taking action or doing something that pulled people back. So the earlier this month, 18 months after it was passed and significantly curtailed voter drives for this year's elections, the chief Florida U.S. court judge ruled earlier this month, not this year. This just happened a couple of weeks ago. The chief Florida U.S. court judge ruled that the provision that punished registration groups with a $50,000 fine each time per incident, each time a non-citizen volunteer helped with voter registration work, violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. This is like almost impossible in the state of Florida, that a judge would rule differently than what DeSantis has wanted. The judge asserted that every person, regardless of citizenship status, can assist the league and other voting organizations in registering citizens. So that was helpful there, but there are a whole bunch of other issues that were in that 2023 law that are still in force or in fear. And so as a result, organizations like the League of Women Voters and other registration groups have really had a very poor year of getting people registered. So this weekend, like other places, we were involved in some door-to-door canvassing, postcarding, and phone banking. But the main issue going to these homes was that people were thankful because they found out that they better check on their voter registration, which we've been trying to remind people, because part of the DeSantis laws have made it more difficult, and suddenly you have to re-register on your own. And people didn't know that. They just assumed since they were registered, they're still registered. So we've been really good at it. We want to make sure that we're number one in every one of these draconian things, like our 6-week abortion law. And
Well,
I'll
I'm
finish
curious.
with that, Harvey, just that 6-week abortion law. The one thing out of that is it's the one chance that we have to bring people to the polls. And it's a national issue, but it's a big one for the state of Florida. It's our one chance to maybe get Rick Scott out of office. He's not popular in Florida, and it's our one chance at maybe bringing that wider gap of Trump versus Harris to be much smaller.
Well, you have a referendum on the ballot, but did they get the stipulation that it had to pass with 60%?
So that is the Florida law for all referendums.
Jesus.
So
You have to have
we-
60%.
Yeah, well, I think we're number one in that one also.
And do you have anything resembling the Get Out the Vote door-to-door campaign that Communities United are doing, or the phone banking that Andrea Miller is doing?
So, I mean, all of those efforts are going on in Florida, and I would say, though, that the coordination of them is not nearly as effective as we might want it to be. There are so many groups and organizations and people doing their own thing. And we've seen in Jacksonville a number of pro-democracy progressive organizations have partnered together, but that's a very rare example of organizations coming together to say, let's not step on each other and do the same thing, and try to figure out who's on first. And we're not doing that well enough. And I think our messaging as a result is not as clear as it needs to be.
Andrea and Ray, have you had, Egberto, Jennifer, have you had any connection with the Florida movements here?
I don't at this point.
Okay, well, Jim, if you can maybe hook up with Egberto on the radio and with Andrea and Ray, get some kind of coordination. You know, they're the top of the heap here. It would be really great.
I would love that, because it's something that we can also promote through not only the radio channels, but other channels.
Okay, so if you guys will exchange connections, Jim, have you been in touch with Ray or Andrea at all?
Nope.
All right,
Nope.
so maybe Andrea, if you could, and Ray, if you could somehow help us save the great state of Florida before it floats away, that would be really great.
You should have this one other soundbite, and I've gobbled up probably way too much of your time, but this one other soundbite. DeSantis has actually sent some of his police force to people's homes who signed the petition in support of Amendment 4 to support getting reproductive rights returned to women.
Well, when they come to the door, what do they say?
It's things like, we're here because we think that you have made a mistake and you may be in violation of voter laws, or you missigned, or somebody didn't sign on your behalf, or whatever. And it's intimidation. This is when we got started, we didn't call ourselves Floridians for Democracy. One morning, my wife said to me, we need to do the 1939 project. And I knew immediately what she was talking about. We were seeing virtually at warp speed DeSantis's efforts here, similar to what went on in Germany. And
Wow.
when you look at it today, we were already Project 2025 before we ever knew there was such a thing as Project 2025. We want to be number one. And we
Boy.
have DeSantis for 2 more years, regardless of what happens on November 5th.
My God. Well, Jim, that was a tremendously riveting, unfortunately, really riveting presentation. You did a fantastic job of terrifying all of us. But thank you. I do hope you'll connect with Ray and Andrea and other organizers, Egberto. I don't know if Jennifer Roberts is still with us. We're joined by Roger Rapport, who's going to give us a report from Michigan. But Melissa Hall, you've had your hand up. Are you unmuted here? Let me ask him to unmute you. Hold on. Wait. Sorry about that, but it's a horrible. Most people now have written Florida off, which is a mere 30 electoral votes. Melissa, I can't get you unmuted. There's something there. Okay, go ahead, Melissa, real quickly.
Okay, I've got a few things to say. First of all, in the states like California and Florida, you have disabled accessible voting polls. By the way, I've already voted. And let's go.
Do you have how are we doing with the disabled in the various states? Is there decent care for the disabled voters? I guess we haven't paid much attention. Melissa, thank you for raising that, and glad to hear you voted. What else you got?
Anyway, what DeSantis did by sending police is a violation of their so-called Second Amendment. You cannot send authorities into their homes just because you feel like it.
Well, apparently DeSantis thinks he can, and he's been doing it, and it's a nightmare. It's horrifying. And I hope to God this isn't the future.
And thirdly, if Project 2025 gets in, you won't, if you become disabled or if you become useless to society, they can put you wherever they feel like, and that's why I'm here.
Well, thank you, Melissa. We're glad to have you with us. We appreciate your input. Is there anything else you want to say?
Oh yeah. I am here in Arizona, and we have a Democratic governor, but a very sick, disgusting Republican Congress, and they undermine everything that Katie Hobbs does, and I would appreciate more support.
Well, you should be in touch with John Brakey, who's usually on here. If you'll put your contacts in the chat. Well, and Ray Lutz is with us, and Ray is also in contact with John Brakey. So we do have a
Put my
lot of
contact
people who've
information.
been on our call from Arizona. Thank you, Melissa. We appreciate it. And we're
Thank
glad to
you.
have you with us. Thank you. Dennis Bernstein, did you want to jump in and say hi to Ray and to Andrea and make sure that you've exchanged contacts? As I say, Dennis has a nationally syndicated show.
Melissa Richardson.
I'm trying to get him unmuted.
I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
602.
Yes, there you are.
Yeah, hello. I will reach out. I'm very interested in what Ray and Andrea are up to, and I've got, a whole bunch of my own questions, but I'm not going to, get into it here, but I'm just listening. So please continue.
Okay, we will.
Just learning. I'm on a learning day, okay?
Well,
Can
this
I
is
say, Harvey,
terrifying.
Harvey, I just sent Dennis, Ray, and Andrea an email with all of your contact information so you can all be in touch.
Well, if you'll share, I'm sure Egberto won't mind if you'll share as well. I've been on Egberto's show. He's a terrific host. So do that, and Jennifer Roberts.
Wasserman, you also do to be on again. We just haven't been able to connect, but we need to do it again.
Absolutely. Please do.
I could do a quick commercial. Palast, I don't know what's going to happen, but he's going to be broadcasting with us from Trump rally somewhere in Georgia. So for whatever that, maybe that's when I should bring on Andrea and Ray.
Yeah. Well, before you go down there, let people know where you are. When you say somewhere in Georgia, it kind of raises some.
Well, I'm being a little coy here. So
okay.
Anyway,
well, I do want to mention. Go ahead, Dennis.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, we do want to mention Greg Palast is out and about with the film Vigilantes, Inc. And you can see it online. It's absolutely terrifying and stuff we need to know. And then I will again encourage, Milo Reason will back me up with Nancy Naparco going to see The Apprentice about Donald Trump. It's the worst 2.5 hours. It's worse than a horror movie. But, it is a horror movie, actually. And you really want to know how Roy Cohn got that way. But, definitely important to see because we know it really explains what we're up against. Okay, we have Roger Rappaport, my buddy from University of Michigan way back when. We're also joined by Kevin Camps. When we get clear of this, we're going to talk about what's going on with nuclear. I do want to mention quickly while we have someone on from Florida that the next to last hurricane, the one before Milton, actually flooded the Crystal River nuclear plant, which is shut, but they have radioactive waste there. And, I have seen zero news coverage of the flooding of the Crystal River nuclear plant, which is of incredible ecological significance. So we got Roger Rappaport, who's with us from West Coast of Michigan, and Kevin Camps. But Roger, in terms of the election in Michigan, What kind of stuff are you seeing? And you have a film you can put in the chat. But go ahead, Roger. Fill us in what's going on in Michigan electorally before we turn around into the nuclear issue, if you would. Roger, you with us? Did you disappear, Roger Rappaport? Oh, I guess Roger's gone. Okay, does anyone else want to jump in now on what we're doing? Again, as a nonpartisan call.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay, Roger. But as a
Hi.
nonpartisan call, we are encouraging people to go to the Center for Common Ground to get your phone banking and to the Communities United for Justice to support door-to-door canvassing. Okay, Roger, you want to tell us what's going on in Michigan, please?
So I think the most important thing I want to just start with is at this point in the campaign, everybody who's on this call and everybody you know, the number one thing is to talk to anybody you know, whether or not you live in a swing state. And that means anybody you know who lives in any of the swing states, you need to be on the phone tonight, talking to them directly, exactly the way this forum is going.
Do you want me to say something? I unmuted.
Who's that?
Oh, okay. Hang on. What?
No, go ahead and mute, please. Go ahead, Roger. I'm sorry. I don't know.
Yeah, the number one thing that everybody on this call and everybody you know needs to do, if you know anyone in a swing state, or even if you don't, you can phone bank it. Obviously, there are phone banks everywhere that you can join. But if you know anybody at any level in any of the swing states, you need to be on the phone every day talking to them. A lot of people have not made up their minds, believe it or not. I know that's hard to believe, but it's absolutely true. A lot of people don't know if they're even going to vote. A lot of people don't know in Michigan, for example, whether you can vote straight party, just go straight Democrat. And these phone calls, talking to anybody, even somebody you went to high school with, maybe you live in another state, you need to be on the phone, talking to them directly. There's a lot of misinformation. The number one thing in Michigan that's driving this campaign for both sides is abortion. By far, as you know, Michigan has a law now on the books that upends the Dobbs decision. And that's incredibly important because Trump is running on a Dobbs campaign, and that's where he's by far the most vulnerable. It's incredibly important to speak to women voters. The polls show this as a toss-up right now, with Trump at a slight advantage. It doesn't really have any real significance because we're not at election day. And even if they were correct, it doesn't change the dynamic of the campaign. And I want to emphasize this one point. Trump is rightly being attacked for all sorts of things, but I think a lot of his appeal is the telenovela nature of this thing. What crazy thing is he going to do? What's his next stunt? What's the next scandal? What's the next bankruptcy? Which family member is going to do something stupid? So a lot of the appeal that he has is people just want to see literally what crazy thing he's going to try next. It's a campaign built totally around misinformation and stunts. As far as the actual turnout, it's hard to predict it at this point. But obviously the early voting has already started, and that's why the phone calls are incredibly important. That's by far the most effective way to reach people now. And to repeat myself, if you don't know anybody in a swing state, you can get on phone campaigns right now. I have friends who are doing it, and they're incredibly effective. Just talking to people directly, just the way you guys are doing tonight. The kind of information you're sharing, people want to know. They're hungry for information. And I think Harris has a slight advantage in this respect, that her campaign is a lot more coherent and focused, and it's much better organized than Trump's. Trump's in disarray. And I want to leave on this one point. In the last election, remember, Trump campaigned in 11 counties in Michigan, and he lost 9 of them. Biden only campaigned in I think 2 or 3 counties, won all of them, including Kent County, where we flipped a Republican district for 45 years. It went Democratic, and my district was redistricted, and we went from Bill Huizenga, election denier, to Hillary Scholten, who's one of the best liberal Democrats in Congress. So there's a lot going on in Michigan, but we need to take advantage of the demographic change.
Right. And I guess those of us from the North don't have to worry about our accent. But again,
Right.
as nonpartisan, I'm encouraging Donald Trump to please go to every
Right.
swing county and
Yeah.
again discuss people's private parts, dance on stage for 40 minutes.
Right. You
Um,
understand that you know that Harris is running clips from his campaign stops in her rallies to show the idiocy of his campaign. Unprecedented. She's doing that in Michigan and other states. She's actually running clips from his rallies to show what's going on.
Well, can you explain to me why the Democratic Party has not yet unfurled the D word, which is dementia? I mean, is there any doubt that this guy has dementia at this point?
Well, there was a wonderful piece in the Free Press where they had people from not just Michigan, but all over the country trouncing Trump, literally pages of reader comments. And one of them was from Scott Sagan, the Stanford expert. And he pointed out correctly that killing the Iran nuclear deal has basically opened up nuclear power, made Iran a nuclear power. That was entirely Trump's foreign policy. So if that doesn't represent dementia, I don't know what does.
I don't either. Okay, well, listen, this has been a phenomenal discussion, Ray and Andrea. I know we drag you back time after time, but it's you're doing the key work that really needs support. Ray, do you want to say anything before we switch into other issues? Or Andrea, I don't know I think Andrea may have had to go. Egberto or Jennifer? Jennifer, it's great to see you again. We haven't seen you for quite a while.
No, been pretty busy.
Yes, yeah, we know you have. And I, for one, have always thought that this entire election will turn on North Carolina and Georgia. And people have to remember two things in this election. Well, many, but number one, this is an evolutionary change. Never underestimate the fact that this is the first time in history that the United States might have a woman of color as president of the United States.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
It's a huge, huge deal. And whenever we pull out our hair and say, well, why is it so close? You got to remember that. Jennifer?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there are still a lot of men who are not comfortable with a woman leader. We know that from polling. We know that from comments. But
well, you know it as having been the mayor of Charlotte, for God's sakes. Did you get more? How much pushback did you get when you were running for mayor and then being mayor as a woman?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things that women put up with, a lot of subtle cuts and yeah, just sort of demeaning comments, not to mention the things that happen on social media that are just too gross to, you're delete. So it is going to be historic, and there are a lot of people who are very excited and very enthusiastic. But you're right, never underestimate the hidden misogyny and hidden racism that still exists in a lot of, pardon me here, but a lot of white men.
Oh yeah. Well, when Shirley Chisholm, the first Black woman to run for president, was asked whether she got more pushback being Black or being woman, she did not hesitate. It was absolutely more as a woman, know, and so we cannot,
I tell you something, Harvey. I wrote an article about that when Hillary lost the race well, she didn't really lose the race, but you understand what I mean. And I made the point that the fact that a Black man could get elected, but a white woman couldn't get elected, says a whole lot about the country. And earlier, I hear a whole lot about white men. We have to also take a look into, let's say, Black men and the church. And this is not to lay blame. This is just about societal, how society is working. And I think we have to look at it from an honest perspective. She has a real large uphill battle. Some of the stuff that I've been doing on the radio is to, believe it or not, to shy away from her womanhood, shy away from her color identity, and start trying to get people to look at for the older people, you want your Medicare. For the older people, you want all these things. You have to remember that it isn't about that there's a party, there's a group that really want to take these types of policies away. And Kamala has been doing a great job of that. And she's not talking about her womanhood. She's not talking about her Asianhood, her blackness or anything. She's making it strictly on policy, which is what I think for her to win is something that she has to do, because I have some callers that called in and they made it clear that when people are in their spaces, that the commentary out there is really hard on her. We're not hearing the stories about the cover story about they don't know her or they don't know her policy is not real. You know, everybody knows her policy. Everybody knows her. That's just the cover story for what Jennifer was just talking about, being a woman, being a person of color.
But let me tell you, you know, back to the economy, Alberto, you're absolutely correct. That is really the issue that needs to be brought up. And in fact, the Trump signs that are going up all over Charlotte, because, you know, that campaign is pushing back here, they're all the comparison. Trump low prices, Harris high prices. Trump low taxes, Harris high taxes. They have boiled it down to that simple and put it on a sign.
So effective. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go.
A quick one. I wish we would put on there Trump Trump Project 25, no Medicare, no this, no that, no that, because the surest vote are the people over 65. That is a vote that's going to be there, and then the other vote is for those folks that are disabled. I mean, we have to lay down the privatization of Medicare and all of that in a easy, just like you just said, Jennifer, in those signs that you said. Prices high, that is something that the mind can correlate with. Prices high, Kamala Harris. No Medicare, no health care is done, is Trump. And that is the things that I think we have to put out there. The color issue and the race and all of that. I take it sometimes, right? Because we have to, we're racialized, but it's about you're not going to have what you need if this guy gets elected.
Well, and one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
We've got, I know you've got a couple more of these before Election Day, but we're also planning for the protest after the election, because there are a couple of lawsuits the Republicans here already issued even before voting started that are trying to get people off the voter rolls. And this is going to happen around the country. They're setting up how they're going to protest because they're already feeling like they're going to lose, but it's going to be close. So that's another thing that we've got to keep sharing information about, the myths that are out there and the legal attacks. Thank goodness for that judge in Georgia. I mean, thank goodness. And it's these nonprofit groups that have the money to hire good attorneys to dig into why these things are unconstitutional. We have to work against them. So continue to support the groups that are doing that, because we're going to need to be fighting in the courts after November 5th.
Right. And it's, I don't know when Steve Bannon gets out of jail, but you know, that we're going to get a big a push from that too. And always remember what he said, the way for the fascists to win is to fill the commons with SHIT. And that's what's happening, you know. And when you see this movie, The Apprentice, you know, take Prozac before you go see it. I mean, it's just so clear what the lunacy, how the lunacy translates politically. So here we are, and I'm like everyone else, I'm terrified. I'm very thankful for the get out the vote work that people are doing, and you know, there's no excuse for not making phone calls as I will start to do. Alberto, go ahead.
I you know, with all due respect and everything, let's not use the word scared, terrified, or anything. Let's go out. I mean, right now, Trump is talking as if he's won it. Okay. They know they haven't, but they want to promote that because everybody wants to be with the winner. We are winning. We are winning. There's no terrified. We do our job. We are winning.
Well, there you go. As you see from his past, that was always his modus operandi. Never admit defeat, and you know, attack. And Chase Iron and I said it a couple of weeks ago. You know, with Trump, we have been unhinged from any even appearance of trying to have a connection to the truth. It doesn't, there is absolutely no care whatsoever that what they say, as if, it matters. He's now denying that Kamala Harris worked for McDonald's. Where does he get off denying that she worked for McDonald's? I mean, it makes no sense in a real world. So we're in deep stuff. Yes.
But you say when we're talking about her not working for McDonald's, we're not talking about him supporting Project 2025, not only going for Medicare Advantage. You see, when he talks about the size of genitalia and all those things, that is to keep. If we are talking about that, we're not talking about Medicare. So I started my program today talking about Medicare Advantage versus Medicare versus private healthcare. We can't let him dictate the floor, which is what the mainstream media is doing. We're letting them dictate. We got to dictate what's going to be talked about.
Yeah, ignore him. Ignore it. Ignore the rabbit hole. Focus on the joy and change and hope that the Harris Waltz campaign brings. Absolutely. You are completely correct. When you want to counter misinformation or bad information, you do not repeat it.
Exactly. And I do want to say, in a nonpartisan historian observer way, she is an astonishing candidate. I mean, if any woman of color was ever to run for the president of the United States, she has really mastered it. And I think her appearance on Fox News, I think he really sent that guy running with his tail between his legs, And to get my information, by the way, if anybody's interested, every night I watch Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel. And, I can do it like after, I'm here in California, so I can watch at midnight. They've already been on for 3-4 hours. And so I watch the reruns, and they are the classic nonviolent tactic to use against a dictator is one word: ridicule. Ridicule is the most effective tactic we have. And these guys are real masters, let me tell you. So that's where I get my news. I get it from Kimmel and Colbert late at night, and occasionally Jon Stewart. Another broadcaster with us, Lynn Feinerman. Lynn, did you want to jump in here? And Kevin Camps, we will get to the nuclear issue. And Roger, if you'll stick with us on Palisades, that would be great, because important stuff is happening with that. Go ahead, Lynn Feinerman.
Yeah, I'm concerned because, you just said something about how powerful Kamala came off to you when she did her Fox News stint. However, a lot of the press on that, a lot of the media on that, most people will, their eyes will dwell on for at least a moment, even Yahoo News, twisted it to Kamala being not good, inaccurate, all sorts of things like that. And I know that we're used to this already, but I think that, to carpet bomb the way they are prior to the election is making a difference in terms of the way the media, the mainstream media is making a big difference in terms of the polls and everything else, and maybe the voting. But I'm concerned that it's wonderful, as Jennifer said, to keep positive and keep some sense of coming joy, from her lips to God's ears. But I think we also need to really hone in on the tricks and shenanigans that are bound to come. That's all I just
well, they're with us now. There's no doubt about it. Okay, Melissa, you get another. And by the way, Lynn has a radio show. What's your radio show, Lynn? You can put it in the chat, please. Melissa?
Yes, Women Rising Radio, womenrisingradio.com. Thank you.
And again, Egberto, your show is?
The show is Politics Done Right. It's on KPFT 90.1 FM as well as on the internet. You can go to politicsdoneright.com, and get everything about the show. I just want to address one thing with Melissa. Melissa, I hear you about how the mainstream media portray it. The interesting thing about it is the mainstream media is no longer the biggest media out there. I mean, I put in there, we have to be our own media. And with what Harvey does, with what you do, one of the things that I was hoping that at some time we would do is be able to have better coordination so that
I
we
would
could
like to
have,
be in contact with you
yeah,
because
that,
I want to fight for the Community Choice Act, which is Medicare and home for people that don't want to be institutionalized.
Yes.
I agree. Now, one of the things that thank you for that, Melissa. The other thing that I was saying is I would love for all of us that do, sorry, all of us that do broadcast to sort of at some time get together and have coordinated messaging, so that it would have more power as as a group, where we all do the same thing at the same time or something, because
Right.
that is what they do and they're effective in doing that. On my show I have trollers that come on, and they're all singing from the same hymn, and it actually looks like it's real because of the way they do it.
And Dennis Bernstein has been on with us. He's got the Flashpoint show out of KPFA. We have California Solartopia in LA just once a week. And then we have this. And this needs to be spread around. I'm going to hopefully get, by the way, those of you who get multiple emails, my apology. And we're going to work on cleaning up our list. Okay. All right, you guys. Egberto, let me know when you want to have
remind somebody. I just wanted to remind that I put my number and information into the chat.
Thank you so much, and I'm glad to see the Beatles walking across Abbey Road behind you. That's always good. I'm still encouraging Paul Newman to get Eleanor Roosevelt up next to Franklin over his shoulder, but nonetheless, Jennifer Roberts, it's really great to have you with us. And again, you're in the belly of the beast there. It's going to be all about if North Carolina goes the right way, the correct way, or the progressive way. I think that that's going to be the decider. So, is there anything else you want to say to us, Jennifer, before we move on to energy issues?
Oh, I was just say there's also Pennsylvania and Georgia. We're kind of all here supporting each other and trying to keep the votes turning out. So
indeed.
Yeah. Thanks for the support.
Well, thank you, and we'll be back to you if you want to come back to us next week. It'll be the last week of the campaign. I'm sure we'll have a ton to catch up on. As they say, may you live in interesting times. All right. Okay, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Alberto. Stick with us if you like. We want to jump over now to, I don't know if Ray and Andrea have moved on. It's always great to have them. Dennis Bernstein, if you're still with us, that's great. I want to move back to Roger Rappaport and the Kevin Camps. We've had some astounding developments in the energy field. There's really a big push, and you have to question the timing now on this idiocy about these crypto and AI mega corporations wanting to go nuclear. And who wouldn't, if you're getting a public funded energy source, they don't have to put up any money. It's all stuck on the public. They have no liability for the waste, no liability for the accidents. Why wouldn't they? Kevin Camps, you're on the case here with Palisades and the small reactors. Tell us what you think, and then Roger, we'll go to you.
Well, hey everybody. At a single site, the Palisades nuclear power plant in Southwest Michigan on the shore of Lake Michigan, which is the drinking water supply along with the Great Lakes downstream for 40 million people in 2 countries and a large number of indigenous First Nations. At that single site, a grand total of more than $16 billion. I've updated the figure recently based on, press reports and announcements from the Biden administration, et cetera. We're now at more than $16 billion of public money. That's federal taxpayers, state taxpayers, and ratepayers who are public as well, just to restart the old reactor, the zombie reactor at Palisades, and to build 2 so-called small modular reactors. So the giveaway, as Harvey just said, what I say is the state of Michigan and the federal government have pretty much just handed the keys to the U.S. Treasury to Holtec. It's a bit of an exaggeration, but NIRS did an analysis, Nuclear Information and Resource Service, of the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. And shockingly, horrifyingly, the authorizations in that bill for nuclear power surmount $380 billion with a B dollars, $380 billion, which was more than the climate component of the legislation, which was in the $360 billion range. Of course, the nuclear industry tries to present itself as a climate solution, which is a lie. And it's going to be a fatal mistake if we go further down this road than we already have. But you can get to, you get the picture that, like Harvey said, they're making off with the Treasury is what they're doing essentially. And that's on top of having made off with the Treasury for the past 80 years in terms of nuclear weapons and nuclear power, which are flip sides of the same coin.
Well, you used the word Madoff there, which I think is appropriate. Roger Rappaport, you're around the corner from the Palisades reactor. What's the latest news from there? And
Well, first
by
of
the way,
all,
you have a film out. I want you, Roger's film, you can put in the chat, please. I've seen pieces of it. It's great. And
yeah, it is in the chat, and
okay.
it's listed there. You can just type in the time we have left. I'll put it back in the chat, and it's about Trump and Putin. And it was actually made before Trump was convicted, and it's about their future after their fall. You know, after they're both out of power and their plan for a comeback. What I want to talk about in this conversation is the attempts by Kevin's organization Beyond Nuclear and Alan Blinn and myself. We've all filed petitions about the Palisades restart. Now, there are a couple of facts for those who are new, as Kevin just pointed out, and Mark Jacobson, the Stanford professor, has pointed out very clearly. Why are they going for nuclear when they're claiming it's clean, which it's not? It does contribute to global warming. Obviously, there's a huge nuclear waste problem. And to boot, the nuclear industry, which hit a peak, I think, of 128 reactors, is now down to 91. And no one is building these large light water reactors anymore. And the comeback from the industry is to restart reactors that were closed for a whole bunch of reasons, primarily that they were economically inefficient, they cost too much, there were safety issues, and the companies that actually ran them decided to close them for good reason and sell them for scrap. The comeback is that a company, Holtec, which has never, ever run a nuclear reactor or built one, is now attempting to restart the Palisades reactor. They're already in trouble because the steam generators, which are critical to the whole operation, have basically are beyond repair, to put it mildly. And Kevin can explain this in more detail. So a group of petitions have been filed, and they come down to this. The Palisades plant, which was built in the early 1970s, does not really meet over 50 of the NRC's standard safety protocol procedures and rules that regulate nuclear power plants all over. And essentially, rather than fix the plant, which was never built to current NRC standards, they're attempting to bypass by essentially just going ahead and beginning the work on restarting the reactor without any procedure in place for doing this at the NRC, without inspectors on site, without a plan that's in effect. So petitions have been filed to stop all this. And in effect, Holtec is claiming they have implied consent to go ahead and begin work on this reactor, which they claim they're going to restart next year. But already the problem with the steam generators is clouding that situation. So at this point, questions and petitions have been filed. And as a result of that, a judge has issued an order demanding that the NRC respond to these questions. And in addition to that, many, many questions have been answered about the fact that there's no procedure in place to start a reactor that's been closed for decommissioning. So this is an entire process that has been done with no regulations in effect, no inspectors on site, no plan that anybody in the world has ever done to get a reactor working. And Kevin can fill you in a little bit more on the steam generator. But the real problem is beyond this plant, there now is an attempt by industry to restart other closed reactors, because guess what? It takes between 12 and 20 years to build a new one. Another end run is the SMRs, the so-called small modular reactors, which Kevin has referred to. There's actually only one in the country that's actually, after many, many years of talk, that Bill Gates is involved with, and he's subsidizing. And of course, this money that Kevin is talking about is money that he wants the federal government. So we have a billionaire asking the federal government for huge subsidies. And now we have, other large companies lining up for this new technology that's completely and totally unproven. And by the way, the uranium fuel that would power these SMRs is not available here. And the only country that's currently making it is Russia, where there's export controls that would make that very difficult.
Wow. Well, I want to point out also, and to talk a brick, I do want to, and when we're done with the nuclear thing, I want you to come back to the UFO stuff, and we can have a discussion in greater detail. It's very important now. But Myra Reeson, you had a hand, Myra? Are you
Thanks,
on mute?
Harvey. Yes, thanks, Harvey. So we see that in California and Michigan, money in the billions of dollars has been allocated for the in California, over $1 billion has come out of money that was dedicated to address our climate emergency. In Michigan, we've got Palisades looking at billions of dollars of federal money, and now we've got big tech in New York, Constellation, wanting billions of dollars. But this is also happening. We learned from Ron Leonard this morning that in Puerto Rico, they're attempting to bring nuclear power in. And Elon Musk in 2022, and more recently, just a few months ago, has been pushing to restart nuclear power in Germany. And he's definitely big tech.
Right.
So, it seems to me like there's a direct link between nuclear power, big tech, and the push for fascism. It's all connected.
Right.
And that's what I wanted to say.
Well, this is all going on in the middle of an election, the most consequential election possibly in U.S. history. And right smack in the middle of it, they're pushing a whole new nuclear technology that will never work. And you got this Elon Musk who's turned into a real satanic figure here. And God knows what he's doing on X with all the, we see Sue Dorfman posted in the chat a peace placard for Trump. I do want everybody to understand that in 2018, 6 years ago, with Jerry Brown as governor, the state of California approved a phase-out plan for the 2 reactors at Diablo Canyon. And it was an absolutely spectacular, comprehensive blueprint for shutting a nuclear plant and taking a state 100% renewable, which California could do. And we, of course, are campaigning here to, by the 28 Olympics, which will be in LA, to make sure the Olympics are totally solarized and cover every rooftop in Los Angeles with solar panels, which we could do. I mean, the one thing that's happened that makes you sometimes think about a higher power is that for the last 70 years, when they've been pushing nuclear power as too cheap to meter, it has utterly failed economically. But simultaneously, photovoltaic cells, wind power, battery technologies, geothermal have all boomed ahead in price, in efficiency, in job creation. Just this morning, the Chinese announced, or there was news that the Chinese have built a 20 megawatt windmill. That is enormous. And it was so far beyond any previous expectation for the size of wind turbines. This is an offshore wind turbine. 20 megawatts is gargantuan. It's probably about the limit. You know, there will be a limit to how big you can build a windmill, and that's probably about it. But, you know, here we are, and over the past 70 years, dating back to the 1950s, renewable technology, solartopian technology, has relentlessly dropped in price and risen in efficiency. For example, Kevin, in the state of Michigan, they could take the $8 billion that they want to do for Palisades and make the wind, solar, the whole state power it with wind and solar. In California, the cost of running Diablo Canyon for the extra 5-6 years to 2030 is over $11 billion. So you have to ask, what is really going on here? Why is money not an object when they're pushing nuclear power as opposed to renewables? Kevin, you've devoted your life to this. You got an answer for us?
Well, ironically enough, Jennifer Granholm, as the governor of Michigan, did some good work on offshore wind potential in Michigan. There was a study by the Land Use Institute of Michigan State University that found that more than 300,000 megawatts of wind power is accessible to Michigan on the Great Lakes. Of course, you don't want to pave the entire shore of the Great Lakes with wind turbines, but just do 1%, do it in the places where it makes the most sense. And that's what Granholm's task force looked at, was already industrialized areas that would avoid fish hatcheries, that would avoid even historic shipwrecks. There were 25 criteria to try to get this right. And what they settled on was southern Lake Michigan, northern Lake Michigan, and Saginaw Bay, where it opens out into Lake Huron. Those were the three prime places. If you tapped 1% of the potential on the Great Lakes for offshore wind power, you'd have 3,000 megawatts electric. And compare that to this Palisades nightmare. 800 megawatts at the zombie reactor and another 600 at these two small modular reactors. That's 1,400 megawatts. If you tapped 1% of the offshore wind power available to Michigan, you'd have more than twice that. And it would cost a little bit less than $16 billion to achieve. So it's madness. There's no explaining it in any rational way other than the Democrats have betrayed us on this issue at the highest level. Biden, Harris is a part of this. Granholm, it's unfortunate. Here we are at the most important election in our history, as Harvey just said. And at least in terms of the anti-nuclear movement, we have been betrayed. And, I'm kind of used to it from Republicans. There are rarely a single member of the Republican Party who ever questions nuclear power, even though they're supposedly fiscal conservatives. They're fine with the giveaway. But the Democrats, it's horrible. It's nightmarish.
Myla, you have a hand up, and then we'll go ask Roger.
I wanted to just clarify, because I mentioned New York and Constellation in the same sentence. And actually, Constellation is the outfit that wants to restart 3 Mile Island. But there are 6 Republicans in the state Senate in New York who have authored legislation to reopen Indian Point, which is within 50 miles of one of the largest, the most densely populated cities in the world, New York City. So,
well, here we are in LA looking upwind at Diablo Canyon. I mean, if Diablo Canyon goes in the next earthquake, we're all dead meat. What? So
this push for nuclear is definitely bipartisan. So we're nonpartisan, and it is definitely, we've been betrayed by both Republicans and Democrats.
Well, it's kind of the stuff of one of Mimi's poems here. We just need a higher answer. Roger Rappaport, you've been on this case for many decades. Why is this happening? Why are the corporate, Bill Gates and Elon Musk, with all this money, why are they pushing nuclear? Why aren't they taking the obvious path to renewables? Do you have any idea?
So Mark Jacobson spelled it out exactly the way Kevin and you explained it, which is It takes between 12 and 20 years to build a nuclear plant. In the case of the SMRs, we don't know, but it could be longer. So there's absolutely nothing to document the assertion that it's green energy. It's not true. They know that. So why does this happen? The answer is pretty simple. There are only a few places you can go in politics at the level we're at. Elon Musk is one of them, obviously. But from a bipartisan point of view, there's the drug industry, right? There's the tech industry, of course, and there's the energy industry. And when you saw Trump going out for $1 billion for the industry, he wasn't being naive. And so the way that the airline industry and these companies and the nuclear industry do it is they give money to both sides. They're equal opportunity donors, and it works. In Michigan, where there's a bitter feud between the Republicans and the Democrats on just about every issue, they found harmony on the nuclear issue, particularly at Palisades, where they gave $300 million, which is, as Kevin points out, it would be much better spent. Think about it for a second. $15 billion is going into one county with 75,000 people. That seems a little weird, considering that all the other counties aren't getting any of the benefit from this $15 billion. And the reason they're doing it is because the same reason that they did the Fermi plant. It's a small town. They need jobs, and it creates enough jobs to boost the economy in this one little county. But the point is that the money is flowing to both parties, and that's why the Boeing thing happened. The lack of regulation, the self-regulation in that industry. Take a look. The Democrats and the Republicans on those aviation safety committees, transportation committees, they both got money from both sides. Delta doesn't care who wins. American Airlines doesn't care who wins, because they win no matter who wins the next election, right? And so it's strictly campaign money, guaranteed for every candidate, all the way down to local officials. Kevin can talk about this. I mean, they even finance local parks and things like that. Anything they can do to influence local election officials, county officials, and so forth. Think about it. If you're a county official, are you going to say no to $15 billion in a county that has 75,000 residents? Probably not.
Well, we're going to do this a few more minutes, and we're going to go to UFOs, which I think actually have a relevance to this issue. It's posted in the chat. Greg Palast movie Vigilantes Inc. is free on his website, gregpalast.com. Leonardo DiCaprio is making it available free. So this is a big deal, Vigilantes Inc. Everybody should see it. And I also recommend going to the theater and see The Apprentice, but be prepared to be deeply depressed. Ray Lutz, you were instrumental in shutting the San Onofre reactor, the two reactors there. There was a third one already shut. The higher philosophical question here: why are Elon Musk and Bill Gates pushing nuclear when we have renewables so readily available? I mean, what's the deal?
Well, what bothers me more is what we're just talking about, is that these Democratic officials are doing the same pushing. And when you look at Governor Whitmer, you look at these various people, and even Harris, and indeed this issue that was brought up about the money, that does happen a lot. So like in Los Angeles, all the Democrat, that's a very blue area, and they get tons of money from these utilities, tons.
Yep. Correct.
Now the utilities, so I looked into this very, very deeply as to what was going on financially with the San Onofre plant. It is economically a complete loser. They wanted to get rid of it for many years, but if you can keep fixing it, it makes a lot of money to fix. So they love the fixing up of things. And you know what? It makes jobs and so forth. So they go, yeah, let's fix these things up. Let's put people to work. And, maybe as long as they don't start them up, it's okay. I mean, it's just like a free thing to give people some work. But behind all that, there's one other issue I want to point out. And I was reading this thing called, it's one of these journals, international relations or something like that. You can see it at the local bookstores. And one of the issues that these authorities are interested in is making sure we have attraction for students in schools to become nuclear experts. Why? So that they can all be ready to make a nuclear arsenal and to be able to compete with the other nuclear forces in the world. Now, it's somewhat of a legitimate concern. We do have nuclear issues on the table, some of the worst that you can ever imagine. How many strategic missiles are pointed at each other is one of the most disastrous situations we could ever get ourselves in. It's horrible. And no one ever talks about it because it's just so hard to think about. And so there's this dark underbelly, I think, which is these officials at the top are, number one, they bring them in and they go, well, we can't make it to, there's not going to be enough energy to make it to, the green future, and blah, blah, blah. And so we need to have these things extended in life and we need to maybe renew them. But the point is it takes too long to get them going. It's just a mess. The waste is a huge problem that no one likes to ever consider, and they don't talk about it. But anyway, I just wanted to point out those things and not talk too long.
No, you're fine.
It is the Democratic machine takes this money and they can't help but take it. I mean, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars per candidate in Los Angeles, and they take it. And then they're beholden to the utilities, and they love it. So that's what we're up against. The only place that's really good about this, Anaheim. Anaheim has their own utility. They don't go to the utility for profiteers. Anything extra that they make goes back into their coffers. So they're not in a profiteering mode. And that's the kind of thing we need to push for long term, in my view. Okay, thanks.
Though the munis have been better, but we have the DWP here in LA. But here's the situation. I mean, and we'll move on from this to talk here. But in the bigger picture, on the one side, we've got this white guy, Donald Trump, running against the first possible female of color, and also a great progressive Kamala Harris. And it's an apocalyptic event, this election. At the same time, we have a nuclear power industry that's utterly failed. We have 94 reactors in this country that are uninsured and uninspected. There's no big reactors going to be built anymore. And they're doing this insane thing of digging up cars that are up on blocks in the front yard, basically, with blown tires, and they want to restart them. It's completely insane. And at the same time, we have a renewables industry and then small reactors are mythological. They don't exist, clearly destined to fail. Anybody who looks objectively at the small reactor scenario, it's not going to go anywhere. And meanwhile, we have two large reactor sites, one in Ukraine and one in Russia, that are now in war zones. The worst fear that we've ever had about commercial atomic power is to have them in war zones. And here we've got two multi-reactor sites. So you have a total dead end, realistically, in any sane universe for nuclear power, from cost, from the environment, from human health, you name it. And even logistically, it makes no sense. Anybody that thinks we're going to have small reactors in the next 5 years is smoking dope. It's ridiculous. At the same time, we have this renewables industry that has gone beyond our wildest dreams. It's incredibly cheap, incredibly effective, ecologically generally sounds, small issue, they do kill birds, we have lithium, blah, blah, blah. But nonetheless, it's a no-brainer. And yet we have this resistance from these guys like Elon Musk and Bill Gates, who think they're smarter than everybody else, who are forcing this technology down our throats. What is going on? I mean, it's got to be a bigger picture. Tataki, you've been waiting patiently.
Well, one way of seeing the bigger picture, to my mind, is that we already live in a kind of religious state, a national security state. When you think about, when we're talking about how is it, who is it, what is it that has unlimited power over decision with no liability? To me, that's a supreme being. Okay, so the clause of corporate personhood is basically the place where the corporate capture of our entire nation, including our national security state, lives. That's where it lives, that unlimited power and zero liability. We're old enough here to remember that the reason nuclear power was created was to create fissile material. We have a situation now where in Ukraine and in Gaza, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists have moved the doomsday clock to 90 seconds to midnight. It's more dangerous than the time of Cuba. We have the Biden administration putting on hair trigger the nukes surrounding Russia. And we have Putin saying he's willing to use tactical nuclear weapons to defend the western part of Ukraine. We are in a very dangerous situation. Now, why do I bring this up in relation to UFOs? It's clear that with the work, not just Danny Sheehan, people didn't realize Danny had the constitutional attorney, Danny Sheehan, Ellsberg case, Watergate,
Okay.
Karen Silkwood, etc. Iran-Contra, the Standing Rock tribe, never lost a case. He has been very quietly the constitutional attorney of record for Air Force and Navy pilots for the past 47 years. He knows a lot about all this, more than most people, Project Blue Book, inside information, etc. So they have set up this new entity called the New Paradigm Institute. He has learned and he's had conversations. It's the one issue in Congress where virtually everyone agrees. We want to know what the hell's happening. Republicans, Democrats, Independents. So he has shared that with all the folks in the Pentagon people, deep in the military, they share a very far right perspective, national security overall. They are not afraid of all of us going up, of entire nuclear conflagration and nuclear winter and humanity not survive. That's not an issue they're afraid of. In the interest of national security, first strike is paramount. First strike ability is paramount. And testing your adversary is paramount. And they have, most of them, a mindset that, you know, they may go to heaven and others may not. Okay? What they are terrified about is what they know has happened. That the UFOs have demonstrated to aircraft carriers, to Poseidon missiles in Montana, to all around the world, that they have the capacity to shut that down. They have demonstrated it over and over again over the last 50 years. So what's at stake here is that people have been saying forever, well, why don't they just show themselves on the White House lawn? And there's been a lot of arguments about that. The fact is that this planet and its life-generating capacity, not just for humans, but for the plants and the animals and the minerals, has been of interest for species outside our planet for a long time. They come and go, okay? And they have,
Tatanka, let me quickly interrupt so we can deal with the hands, and we'll keep going, okay?
okay.
Can you hold just for 1 second? Because I hate seeing
Sure.
hands sitting there. Kevin Camps, go ahead. Steve Kaiser, Melissa, and Mylan, then we'll go back to Tatanka. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, I put him in the chat. I just wanted to do an update from 2 weeks ago. We did get our intervention petition in at Palisades to try to stop this zombie reactor restart. So check the chat. And we also got some comments into the state of Michigan about stop dumping thermal wastewater, toxic wastewater, and radioactive wastewater from Palisades into Lake Michigan. So those are in the chat, and I've got to jump. Thanks for having
Okay,
me.
yeah, Kevin, I thought you did. Can you find out more about the radioactivity situation at the Florida nuke that got flooded? We need to find out more about
We've
that.
got to look into it. It's
If
the
you can,
latest example
right.
of this stuff. Like India got hit by that tsunami. I don't remember what year that was. A nuclear plant in India got hit by that tsunami, and it flooded the nuclear plant, including the high-level radioactive waste pool. So
Yeah,
this
here,
is not
Steve,
the first time.
yes, if you guys can come back next week and let us know what's going on there. This is a big deal. There was radioactive waste sitting there and it got flooded. So thank you. It's Crystal River. Thank you so much, Kevin. We'll see you next
Pardon
week.
me, if
Thank
I
you.
could just jump the queue.
Go ahead real quick and
I
then Steve
just wanted to
Kaiser
say,
and
I also just
Melissa.
put something in the chat because unfortunately Anaheim, the city of Anaheim, California is invested in nuclear power. I put something in the chat. It's part of the Southern California Public Power Authority, which was created in 1980, primarily to provide the funding for the construction of Arizona's Palo Verde nuclear power plant. So I hope you heard that, Ray, and sorry to
Well,
disillusion.
the LA Muni is also invested in Palo Verde, as
That's
Myla has raised repeatedly. Thank you. Okay, Steve Kaiser, Melissa, and then we'll go back to Tonka. Steve, let's get you unmuted. Melissa, we'll get you unmuted, and then go ahead, Steve Kaiser.
Okay. Yeah, Tatanka, you're talking about Danny Sheehan. I've had the opportunity to discuss this with a couple of times. He says as a teenager, he was noticing UFOs and noticing they weren't being explained. And that really set him on the road to alternative information in general. And we're invited to live in almost a synthetic world where we see all this violence and action on television and wonder why young people are going absolutely crazy and blowing away their classmates. But the nature of this, the thing, people expect a scenario like the day the Earth stood still, where he lands on the White House lawns and everybody comes out and they interact with him. Well, these creatures have been here forever. They come and go as they please. And you look around this part of space, we're like shore leave to them. And to the extent, and they're air breathing, they're walking around breathing the air. So this is a very important location to them, and they're not going to let us blow this up. Now, you mentioned Maelstrom in Montana, also Minot in North Dakota, ICBM launch stations. And they have come over there and they started the countdown and uncovered them for launch. And Maelstrom, they were going nuts about this. They didn't know what to do. And fortunately, the aliens shut it all down and took off. But not only have we been experiencing this, but the Russians have had incidents like this also. So they're not going to let us blow ourselves up. If it really comes to a very important point, they're going to step in because this is too important to them. Even if us 8 billion big naked monkeys feel like that's the appropriate action to take with each other. So the magnitude of this is beyond the scales. It's totally occluded. Initially, when this thing came out, like Barney and Betty Hill were abducted in 1961, they're covering this in the papers all over the place. It's what's come down on our news coverage, really, that brings us together in the Pacifica community. Because, if we're not going to get the truth, we're going to figure it out on our own, one way or another. So,
All right.
and the real root cause of, I'm finishing up, the real root cause of this is just one word. It is power. It is absolute off the scale power. Because if you got the power, you understand this kind of technology, it's totally transformative. We've seen in our lifetime how transformative all this has been. Well, this is just the start of it. In the next couple of years, they can't keep it contained anymore, and it's bursting out at the seams. I don't know if you heard about this incident down in Florida at a mall where there was supposed to be a 9-foot alien walking around. 30 police cars showed up. All the police deserted their districts. They had to go and see what a damn alien looked like. It turned out to be a hoax of some sort.
Well, they probably recruited him for the NBA, right?
That would,
Anyway,
wouldn't be on, it wouldn't be enough.
I always
Okay,
thought that Ross Perot was an alien. Now I think it's Shohei Ohtani. I mean, but what can I tell you? Thank you.
It's intense power. It is it's enormous power. You got access to this technology because we're talking about, faster than the speed of light travel. It is said at Zeta Reticuli, about 49 light years in the southern hemisphere. You can't see it from here. They can make that trip, and this is pure hearsay, what I've heard. So let me identify it as that. But they can make that trip in 9 months, 49 light years. I mean, we're at the edge of total transformation, and that's all I got.
Okay, and people, of course, well, this has always been considered woo-woo kind of stuff, but I've just been watching this documentary on Netflix, and it's just pretty clearly established that there's something going on here, and what Danny Sheehan is working on with Tatanka and so forth is to get this in the public. But I don't think there's much doubt about it. Melissa and then Lynn. Melissa Richardson, go
They
ahead.
can't contain it anymore, Harvey. It's
Yeah,
bursting
well,
out
go ahead.
everywhere.
Sir, I have two things to say. As far as nuclear power, has anyone remember at the Revolutionary War, the surprise attack George Washington did on the British? If you're gonna trust nuclear power, the same nuclear power that you're trusting can be used against you. And I came up during the No Nukes film and with James Taylor, Carly Simon Jackson Brown, and Bonnie Raitt, and I just want to know first, why haven't the progressives fought for renewable energy?
Well,
And
we
so,
have been. We have been, and listen to our show, California Solartopia. There's a pretty substantial movement for renewables. And the good news is it makes economic sense. Melissa, anything else? And then we're going to go to
and then,
Lynn.
so for the UFOs, I'm Native American, and I'm not an official tribal, but I have a lot of Native American in my blood, and I know that what I will call the first peoples were here before us, and what we're gonna do, what both parties are doing, if we're not careful, we need to respect the first peoples.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Melissa.
Sluggo, you
Then
might
we'll go
want
back.
to Sluggo, you might want to mention to Melissa that you had something to do with that No Nukes concert and the Muse movement.
Yes, it was fun. Anybody wanted to see about that, by the way? It was a great movie called Far Out, about our hippie farms, which everybody will love, and we'll get that out there when we can. Thank you, Melissa. Thanks, Mike,
Please
for
get my
reminding us.
out to Alberto.
Yeah, what's that?
Please get my number out to Alberto so I can work with him.
Okay, Lynn Finerman, and then we'll go back to Tatanka.
Yeah, I just wanted to speculate because Tatanka is getting into something very deep and interesting and heavy and all that, like heavy water. But anyway, I wanted to speculate that even if DARPANET has been holding off all kinds of toys and the people behind DARPANET, and it's actually humans who have these, advanced space objects and etc. The strain of thinking is that humans always need somebody to be an authority. And, it's been historically so long. I mean, it had to be a pope, it had to be a king, it had to be a this, it had to be a that. And now what we're hoping is that somebody's going to rescue our randy asses, excuse me. And, this is the next authority figure. And, I think that we really need to admit that it's up to us, regardless of who shows up on the White House lawn.
This is a key point, and we can never give up our agency in this situation. And until now, the common parlance has been that why haven't they done this? Well, they respect free will. It's up to us, right? They're not going to do it. And don't look for a savior. Don't look for a new savior. The issue right now is it's so much in their interest that we not destroy the life-giving capacity of the planet. And so what the gentleman said earlier is entirely correct. And the point I was going to make about the aerospace and defense people that are working on this, they're not afraid of us all dying in nuclear war. They are afraid of being exposed, that they can't get it up. That right when they're going to have the conflagration, they have the power to shut the whole thing down. If that's how they demonstrate that they exist, that changes the whole power game, okay? So that's what's at stake here. That may happen. But if we actually, I mean, the communication should be from us to our own democratic administration, end that war in Ukraine, end that war in Gaza, get it done. Because if you want to maintain national security as you understand it in our old frame of reference, that's key, because otherwise every nuclear power will be exposed that they are powerless in this situation. And humanity has to come to terms with the fact that we're not alone. And this is civilizations as much advanced, may even, I mean, we know they're technologically advanced. We know their communication advanced. The spaceships are biologic. They're guided by telepathy. We are so far behind in that way. What if some of them, because there's all this, there's so much vetting, there's so many different entities coming and going, and some have their own interest at the expense of ours. Women have been taken, women have been impregnated with ETDNA. Women are then taken, I mean, they wake up and they're pregnant. At the end of first trimester, they wake up and the fetus has been taken from them and they're no longer pregnant, okay? So that's not something that we consider acceptable, all right? Anyway, there's a whole lot of adapting we have to do spiritually, educationally, ethically, politically, legally. I mean, there is a strong chance that the Majestic 12, the robber barons of the Eisenhower administration, the elite capitalists, have teamed up with interests in the national security state to actually have treaties with some of these beings. Now, that has to be vetted. All this has to be vetted by an agency to decide what's true and what's not true. But if that's happened, that has profound legal implications, because what have we been doing with pulse technology ever since Roswell? We've been bringing, 1947, we've been bringing the ships down, capturing the inhabitants, capturing the technology, reverse engineering the technology, studying the inhabitants, and then executing them. I mean, this is completely, unbeknownst to us, okay? So there are a lot of issues, and newparadigminstitute.org. I strongly recommend. Carol and I took Danny's first 8 classes, and then Richard Dolan, who is the known historian of the UFO movement, took another 8 classes. They're offering the first ever ufology master's and PhD degrees with Ubiquity University. There's so much going on, but the issue before us right today is a global hearing yesterday from people through many European countries, both sides.
Taka, can you post the link to that and
Yes.
put it in the chat so
I'll
people
do it
can-
again. It's
Please.
newparadigminstitute.org. I'll do that. And just to conclude,
yeah,
the issue on Congress is that we would already have had subpoena power to go after the Department of Defense, but a call came in. Matt Gaetz is the one that led this. So there are like 5 Republicans in the House and 2 senators out of the whole thing that opposed this Schumer bill. 98 out of 100 senators approve it, and 430 out of 435 Congress people approved it. So there's a move to have the entire 64-page bill, which includes the subpoena power and getting it to a civilian review to go to the Library of Congress so we can all find out, and a timeline on that, to have that reinserted. That's gonna start from the moment we know who the next president is, okay? And
Okay.
people are working all over the world, and other countries have the same issue. The top people in national security know what's going on, and the rest of us don't. So it's a global movement.
Well, it's going to be interesting to follow this, and we're not going to shy away from it. I mean, if people are concerned about credibility, see the Netflix series. I mean, it's there. There's the records are there. There's no mystery. Well, there are a lot of mysteries, obviously, but it's clearly a reality.
You'll find everything you need at newparadigminstitute.org. It's a robust site, and they have it's up to date, and they have great things going on all the time. So,
okay,
yeah.
Check it out. Steve, thank you, Tatanka. It's a big deal. And then over the next 4 years, we're going to start to be a vanguard on this and really deal with it in a rational way. Steve Caruso? Thank you, Steve, by the way, for engineering. Mike Hurst, thank you. We don't know where Wendy is. I hope she's okay. But everybody else, this has been another great session. We still have more than 30 people with us. Go ahead.
If people want to donate to Wendy, you can go to her Facebook page. She's Wendy Lederman, L-E-D, Letterman, E-R-M-A-N.
Okay, go ahead. Steve, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, China just came out and said, we wish that everybody would not be the first person to use nuclear weapons, and to distort that policy would be in vain. But he's calling for everybody to disarm. The director of the Department of Arms Control in China's Sun Xiaobo is saying, look, we don't need nuclear weapons. We want the complete prohibition and thorough destruction of nuclear weapons, as well as the establishment of a world free of nuclear weapons. So, I mean, shot across the bow for peace. Thank you. That's all I had to comment on.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Tatanka. And we'll have Jim here, Garrison, and Danny when he can come on. This has been another incredible session here. We still have more than 30 people with us. You guys have the greatest attention span, as I say, of anybody in America. We'll have another session next week. People need to be calling, get out the votes in Michigan, North Carolina, Georgia, especially. And you know, as everything, Ron Leonard, thanks you for being with us. And I just want to remind people, we have the technology to go far beyond nuclear power. I don't know why we're still you know stuck with it. It makes no sense, except for these billionaires. They have their own agenda, and we need to stop it. But number one, we have an election that's going to change the world one way or the other. I mean, and I don't have to say that to all of you. So it's 4:18. If no one else has anything to contribute, we'll take the extra 2 minutes, go out, toke up, and we'll see you all in a week. Okay? No nukes, everybody. And let's save our democracy, what's left of it. Thank you.
Okay, no nukes.
Thank you.
No nukes. And those of you, we will not be on California Solartopia Wednesday. We got preempted, but someday soon we'll have a Pacifica that's alive and well, and I think we're getting there. We've made some progress. So let's make this election, make America democratic.